Hello, subscribers! This is the second video in a 9-part series where I rate every anime I've ever seen, with some caveats that I mentioned in the previous video. Today's video is all about the second-rate animes. These are the best animes out there, but they lack something to push them over the edge to make them the best of the best. Let's get started. My Hero Academia is your typical every character has his or her own special power shonen action anime, but instead of ninjas, pirates, or wizards, it uses superheroes. In a world where 60% of the population inexplicably develops superpowers, Deku, our main protagonist, has no powers, but still wants to be a superhero, and wouldn't you know it, he ends up befriending the most powerful superhero and inheriting his power. With this newfound power, he is able to enter UA High, a school specifically for superheroes in training. And he has a lot to learn since every time he uses his new power, he breaks his bones. My Hero Academia gets 4 stars. I think out of all the animes in this particular genre, My Hero Academia is my favorite. One Piece is the only anime about pirates that I know of, and it is one of the longest running animes. It has almost reached 1,000 episodes. And in typical shonen fashion, every character has their own power, and that sets them apart from every other character. Usually this power is brought on by a devil fruit that once you eat it, you gain a certain power, like your body turning to rubber, or some other wacky power. But in exchange you can no longer swim, and ocean water weakens you. Kind of a big drawback for pirates who live on the ocean. Another thing of note is that everybody tends to have a certain personality quirk. A lot of times in the way they talk, but one of the villains that showed up had one that was completely out of the blue and made no sense. Though there are probably plenty that didn't make sense, but this one stuck out to me. The first time you see him, he has a piece of steak stuck to his face. Like a full steak, not crumbs. So you think to yourself, oh, his devil fruit power must have something to do with stickiness or magnetism of some sort. But nope, he never ate a devil fruit, he just gets food and spoons stuck to his face because he needed some sort of personality quirk. You have to hand it to the creators of One Piece though, they do keep the characters feeling fresh with all these personalities and the most unique laughs.
Mama, mama.
笑い声か今の。
笑い声なら問題あるのか？
バカみてえで驚いたんだよ。
ピッカピッカピッカピッカピッカピッカだな。
One Piece gets 4 stars, which is kind of impressive for an anime that lasted as long as it has, and it's still going. The filler episodes of One Piece seem few and far between, which is not what I would expect for an anime that lasted this long. Neon Genesis Evangelion is what some might call a masterpiece. Not me personally, but some. It's one of those animes that if you have not seen it, then don't bother telling people you watch anime, because no self-respecting weeb should skip this anime. Set in what seems like a post-apocalyptic future where Tokyo is now Neo-Tokyo, and they live in an underground city, or more specifically, the city moves underground anytime a threat appears, we never see much of the rest of the world, or even the people who live in the city for that matter. So it really feels like there isn't much out there. But Neo-Tokyo is the last line of defense against the world-ending threat. And what is that threat? Well, first I have to point out that Evangelion is chock full of religious symbolism, such as an enemy's attack making explosions shaped like crucifixes, or the three computers running the city being named after the three wise men, and the enemy sent to destroy humanity being called angels. Luckily, that seems to only be a name given to them. At no point does the anime try to imply that they are real angels sent by God. I would have a serious problem with it if it implied they were actual angels. The actual plot of Evangelion is kinda complicated, and apparently not all of it is actually in the anime. At least, not in an obvious way. And I'm not even gonna try and explain it. All I'll say is that in the anime, humans find a prophecy in the Dead Sea Scrolls about Third Impact. If you want to know what First and Second Impact were, tough luck. So they find out that 12 angels are gonna show up, maybe 13, I don't know, so they prepare for these attacks and build the Ava units. Giant mechas that use angel DNA or something and are piloted by teenagers. Specifically kids who were alive during Second Impact. Something about that makes them compatible with the Ava units. That and the units have their dead mother's souls inside them, or something. I would like to give Evangelion 3 stars because its ending is so confusing, and there are a lot of unanswered questions, but I just can't in good conscience give it less than 4 stars because of how seminal it is. Is that the right word? I don't know. Besides the unanswered questions and the confusing ending, which they made a bit less confusing with a movie, I think. It was called End of Evangelion. The writing is great and certainly deserving of 4 stars, so I'm not too bummed about giving it a higher score. One Punch Man is a satire that makes fun of some typical anime tropes. It stars Saitama, a man who can literally one-shot any opponent, and this of course makes him a very bored man. So he's a hero for fun, but being a hero for fun means you're out of the limelight and nobody expects him to be so powerful, so once he starts actually getting his hero license, he has to start at the bottom. That seemed like a badly formed sentence, but I'm sticking with it. If you're looking for tense action sequences where the hero has to overcome great odds, then you're gonna have to wait for when Saitama is not on screen. There is plenty of action to be had. They don't just throw all the villains at Saitama. He's more of an ex machina in his own anime. You'll get these really intense battles that everyone has such a hard time with, then Saitama shows up and just one-shots the enemy. The anime is still ongoing, so I couldn't give it 5 stars even if I wanted to, but I don't think I would. I think it's missing something that I can't put my finger on. Maybe it's just not as funny as I think it should be, but regardless, it's still an easy 4 stars. Samurai 7 is the anime adaptation of the classic samurai movie that I haven't actually seen yet, The Seven Samurai, which I believe is also what the Magnificent Seven is based on. Unfortunately, I never actually saw the whole anime all the way through. I've only seen episodes inconsistently, but I do plan to rectify that eventually, because from what I did see, it's a great anime. The main plot is that a village is in danger from bandits, so they hire a samurai to protect them, and this samurai says he'll need at least 7 to fully protect the village from the bandits, which I think were actually hired by the government for some reason. Keep in mind, I missed a lot when I watched it, and it was quite a while ago, so I could very easily get some details wrong. Since this was based on what was originally a black and white movie, I won't keep back on spoilers, so before I go into spoilers, I will tell you this anime gets 4 stars. Now if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to the next section quickly. Alright, spoiler alert, everybody dies. And I only remember one of the deaths, but it was a good death. Only his feet remained, but he did his job. Since I never saw The Seven Samurai or The Magnificent Seven, the only movie I have to compare it to is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. In that movie, also, everybody dies, and there may even have been 7 of them. But Rogue One was missing something. It wasn't a terrible movie, but it wasn't great either. I think the main problem was I just didn't care about the characters or their mission. It was a prequel, so we knew how it would end. But also, it was a suicide infiltration mission where Samurai 7 is a suicide defense mission, which I think adds something to the idea that they're sacrificing themselves. Take Boromir's death in Lord of the Rings. That was a good death. Probably the best death in any movie, and it's because he was protecting the hobbits until help could arrive. But if he had died because he just did something reckless, it wouldn't have been as good. Samurai 7 has good deaths that have a real emotional punch. At least if the one death I remember is anything to go off of. Whenever I think of Samurai 7, I also think of Vasquez, because they came out on, I think, Toonami at about the same time, and they have a certain something in common. But unlike Samurai 7, I've actually seen Vasquez all the way through. At least I'm pretty sure. Vasquez is, at its core, basically Romeo and Juliet with ninjas. So right away, you know it's a tragedy. The 2 ninja clans, I think Iga and Koga, I could be wrong, are on the verge of a wedding between 2 of their members. I don't remember anyone's name. But tragedy strikes when the shogun decides the 2 clans should fight to the death for some reason that I don't remember. Each individual ninja has their own unique ability to use in a fight, like having really stretchy limbs or blowing up like a balloon. And the key to any fight is keeping that ability secret until your opponent is dead. This anime gets 4 stars. Alright, spoiler alert, now's your chance to skip to the next section. Remember when I said Vasquez and Samurai 7 had something in common? Well, you probably already figured it out, but like Samurai 7, everybody dies. It's a tragedy through and through, and worth the watch. It's also not for kids. I should probably mention that. Dragon Ball is the low-hanging fruit of anime. It's an action-oriented anime that hits the lowest common denominator. New anime shows up, how do you defeat them? Well, just get stronger, of course. Dragon Ball's answer to every threat is just get good. New techniques are always overshadowed by just getting stronger and faster. There's never really the question of how Goku is going to win, more a question of how many episodes will it take. I would like to give Dragon Ball 3 stars for being so simplistic and repetitive, but there are a couple reasons why I'm giving it 4 stars instead. First, Goku's prized possession that he got from his grandpa is the 4-star Dragon Ball, so I like the, symmetry? Second, Dragon Ball is, like Evangelion, just one of those animes that everybody knows. It's a classic and is many people's first anime. Not mine, but many. And this review takes into consideration all of Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and yes, even Dragon Ball GT. When I first heard about Black Clover, it sounded like just a Naruto with wizards instead of ninjas, so it sounded like a ripoff to me. So I wasn't interested, but as seems to be the case whenever I think something is just a ripoff of something else, it actually turns out to be better than what it may or may not have been ripping off. Digimon turned out to be better than Pokemon, and Black Clover is better than Naruto. In a world full of magic and everybody gets a grimoire when they turn, I think, 15, a process which is never really explained. Asta has zero magic and has to make up for it by exercising a lot. This is a common trope in anime where the main character starts either weak in some way or is just underestimated by everyone who doesn't know him yet. Naruto can't get clone jutsu to work and generally seems useless when he first starts. Deku has no quirk until All Might gives him his, and Asta has no magic. And there are other examples, of course. But luckily for Asta, not having magic is exactly what he needed in order to use anti-magic. So he gets his own 5-leaf Clover grimoire that lets him use anti-magic swords. As far as I can tell, this anime has no fillers, and it does a good job of always having a threat on the horizon. Any lull in the plot is short-lived. Black Clover really likes the underdog trope so much that the main theme in the anime is class warfare, or at least one of the main themes. The nobles who are blessed with a lot of mana tend to look down on those who have very little mana. And of course, Asta has zero mana, so he tends to be looked down on a lot, especially once everyone finds out where he gets his anti-magic from. I do like the underdog trope, but Black Clover can be a little heavy-handed with it, especially in the most recent episodes I saw before writing this script. In it, a group of low-mana people decide they want revenge on everyone who was blessed with mana by getting power from a devil. This seems fine and all, except the main person leading them. From everything we see of her, she had a husband who loved her before he died. And while he was dying, he said something to her that we, the audience, can't hear, but we can see his lips moving, but no sound is given, or it's drowned out by background noise. And I absolutely hate when animes do this. If you're gonna not let me know what they say, don't show me their lips moving. It's incredibly annoying, and even more so in this circumstance. Because we find out later that he was supposed to have said something very insulting to his wife, indicating that he never actually loved her, and she was just like a tool or trophy to him. But before the anime gets around to letting you hear him say this, it makes it very clear that this woman is delusional and is just projecting her own self-pity on him. And it bugs me that no one really called her out on what was obviously self-pity. Because obviously the writers knew where they were going with it, and they didn't see what was obvious. Also tried to call her out because he doesn't have any magic, but he doesn't get bitter about it. But she says she wishes she could be that positive, and everyone just pities her and lets her go her way. At this point, she's a cold-blooded murderer, by the way. Also, after she killed her husband, she apparently became a lesbian. Now, most of the time, when an anime shows two women being very close, but not kissing to make it obvious that they love each other in that way, it's pretty easy to write it off as just being really good friends, but not this time. I could ignore the hand-holding, but they also have a ghost moment of, here, I'll hold your hand to help you do this thing. This just adds to the evidence that she did not love her husband, and she should not be pitied because she has little magic. She is a liar and a murderer, and I did not like this story arc for trying to justify her actions. Another thing I don't like in Black Clover, but to a much less degree than murderers being justified, is this thing they do that certain women go crazy when they fall in love with someone and they can't admit it to the person. This is fine in the short term, but the more it continues and the more it seems integral to their character, the more it becomes obvious that these relationships will never happen. And that bugs me. When Black Clover finally comes to an end, I want to see a happy ending. I want to see that Asta married Noel. Also, Black Clover started kind of rough. Asta is the typical idiot for the audience sake. Anytime something needs to be explained to the audience, they explain it to Asta. But the exposition in the first episode or two is kind of forced. Like, Asta is a little dumber than even he should be. But regardless, I'm still giving Black Clover 4 stars. In the anime of Fairy Tail, magic is commonplace, and in the Kingdom of Fiora, those who are serious about their magic join mage guilds. Lucy Heartfilia is our introduction to the Fairy Tail Guild when she runs into the main protagonist, Natsu Dragno, who is a member of said guild, and she quickly joins. Fairy Tail is the quintessential power of friendship show. Natsu even literally says at least once the phrase, "My friends are my power," or at least something resembling that. It's also one of those shows where nobody dies. Enemies in one arc will be allies in the next arc. Some of them even join the Fairy Tail Guild. Of course, some enemies do die, but it's very rare, and even then, most of the villains get redeemed in some way. So it's a very happy anime, but even still, it's pretty good at tugging your heartstrings sometimes. It can feel like the storytelling is rather simplistic in terms of shooting emotions at you, but it's simplistic in the best possible way. Speaking of storytelling, one thing I liked about it was the fact that it seemed like the entire series was planned before it even aired. What I mean by that is that something will happen in a later arc that was set up in a previous arc, like they knew from the very start if this person was actually alive, or what this person's secret is. It's not Breaking Bad levels of writing, but it's nice to see a coherent world from the very first episode. Going back to the villains, and I'll probably get into some spoilers here, but Fairy Tail has one of the most sympathetic villains of any series, with Zeref. Zeref, in ages past, tried to bring his little brother back from the dead, but in playing God, he got cursed with the curse of contradiction, a curse that causes everyone and everything you love to die around you, and you become immortal. So in order to keep people from dying, he has to stop caring about whether they live or not, which, as you can imagine, is a pretty sticky situation. This brings me to my first complaint, and a major spoiler, so be warned, spoilers ahead. Zeref is not the only person with the curse of contradiction. Mavis, the first leader of Fairy Tail, also got the curse. This leads to them killing each other because they both loved each other, causing them to die by the other's curse. That part is fine. I like that ending to their story. But then the writers decide to do a stupid reincarnation, just so they can appear to have not died. In this anime where hardly anybody dies. It's so dumb, even by reincarnation standards. First, they reincarnate with no memory of their past lives, which is not as happy as the anime would have you believe. That's basically no different than if they had just ceased to exist, and now there's two random people who look just like them. If your cat dies, you don't go to the shelter and find an identical looking cat and say, "Here's my cat alive again." That's insulting to both cats. And I wrote this script a while ago. It's kind of weird reading this now because my cat actually just died yesterday, but just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, second, they reincarnate into already existing people. No time is given for them to be born and grow up again. It is literally two people who look exactly like the two that died, and they look like they're gonna fall in love, and the sense you're given is that these are the two that died, and here's their happy ending, but they already had their happy ending. They died after centuries of being cursed. They finally died, and should have been off to whatever happy afterlife is canon to the anime. Last complaint, and possibly the biggest, is that Fairy Tail was apparently written by a bunch of degenerate perverts. There is no nudity in it, but you get the feeling that the people behind the anime would have loved to be doing hentai. Lucy is always losing her clothes and being put in compromising positions. In fact, Natsu even jokes when Lucy complains about him seeing her naked that she hardly ever wears clothes anyway. Which was funny, but it does highlight that the writers knew what they were doing. Uza is always changing outfits, and one of her outfits is literally a Playboy bunny outfit. Virgo, every time Lucy summons her, greets her with, "Would you like to punish me, mistress?" or something to that effect. Also, it seems that the females end up getting bound and whipped quite a lot for an anime that seems to be made for a fairly young audience, maybe early teen. It's hard to tell the exact demographic, but it's definitely made for boys. There are other fetishes that you can find in the anime, but I won't go over them. The plus side of this is that Fairy Tail has the best looking women of any anime. Gun to my head, if you ask me which anime I would want to see a hentai version of, it would be Fairy Tail. Do not tell me in the comments if such a hentai exists. I do not want to know. Fairy Tail gets 4 stars. Golden Boy is a short comedy, only 6 episodes, but it's pretty good. Our protagonist, whose name I forgot, so I'm just gonna call him Bob, is basically a genius, though you wouldn't know it by talking to him. Every episode he has a new job, from computer programmer to delivery boy to something to do with film, I think editing maybe. Every episode there is a girl he's got the hots for, and by the end of the episode they see how smart he really was, but he already left to look for a new job, not realizing that the girl he left behind is now in love with him. Bob has a unique perversion that whenever the girl he's crushing on leaves the bathroom, he is immediately tempted to caress the toilet seat that she was just sitting on with his face. Golden Boy gets 4 stars. Oh my goddess. Or ah my goddess. I am not sure about the name. I'm pretty confident you can find either version on anime sites. Either Oh My Goddess or Oh My Goddess. And I have no idea what the difference is, or even if there's a difference. I'm just gonna call it Oh My Goddess because that makes more sense. Oh My Goddess is my favorite purely romantic anime. Not a hard feat, though, since it's the only purely romantic anime I've ever seen. Inuyasha is pretty good in the romance department, but it also has action and demon slaying. Oh My Goddess is just a rom-com about a boy who I think is in college, who one day while calling someone for whatever reason, he ends up getting connected to the goddess helpline, which immediately sends him a goddess to grant him a wish. In comes the goddess Beldandy, the ultimate waifu. Alright, I don't remember the guy's name. I think it starts with a K, but I'm just gonna call him Bob. So anyway, Bob can't think of a good wish, and he doesn't want to waste Beldandy's time, so in his hurry he accidentally wishes that Beldandy would stay with him forever. So his wish is granted, and Beldandy moves in with him, and they start a very tentative relationship, because obviously, if you start dating a goddess, you need to take things very slow, and Bob isn't the type to presume he has any chance with her, but as the series goes on, it's clear she does fall in love with him, and the driving force behind the anime is the idea that they seem fated to be together. Different things will come along to separate them, but as far as I can remember or have seen, none of the conflicts are a difference of opinion that causes them to fight. It's always some outside force trying to separate them. Due to the confusion about the name, I'm not sure how much I've actually seen. I know I still need to watch the movie though, so I don't know if there is actually a definitive ending, or if you have to just assume they get married at some point. Oh My Goddess is probably worth 3 stars, especially if you're not in the mood for a happy anime with no conflict, so to speak. But because it has Beldandy, the ultimate waifu, I can easily give Oh My Goddess 4 stars. There are a few different Street Fighter animes, mostly movies, but I don't remember them well enough to review, except for Street Fighter 2V. Street Fighter 2V is a series, maybe 24, 26 episodes, and it's the best Street Fighter anime there is. It follows a maybe 17 or 18 Ryu and Ken as they seek to find interesting fights and improve their own techniques, with a new technique they learned from Dalsim called Hado. And all the big names in Street Fighter show up to some degree or another, except Akuma. I don't remember any specifics about the plot, but I do remember it being very good. An easy 4 stars. When I first watched Hunter x Hunter, I watched the original first episode, and I was not impressed. I don't particularly care about hunters. You will not find me playing Monster Hunter, and the first episode was not enough to inform me that the hunters in Hunter x Hunter are not at all that type of hunters. They're more akin to bounty hunters, but the first episode didn't really make that clear. Also, the main character that uses a fishing pole as his main weapon of choice did not interest me. Fast forward to some time later, and for whatever reason I decided to try watching the rest of it. Only this time I was going to watch it on Netflix, so I wouldn't have to deal with pop-ups. So I start at the second episode, because I had already seen the first, and it wasn't too long ago, so it was still fresh enough in my memory. But then I noticed something wasn't right. The story was moved on way further than it should have been. So I went back and watched the first episode and realized they remade the anime. And the remake was a lot more condensed than the original. What took the original 2, maybe 3 episodes, the remake did in just 1. And it didn't feel rushed at all. It was paced very well, and of course the animation was a lot better. I will not go back to the original to find out what happens next. I'm content to wait for the remake to come out with the next season, although some of it has already been spoiled for me. Hunter x Hunter has one of the more well-thought-out power systems of any anime called Nen. And it gets a little complicated for me to explain, especially from memory, but it basically has 2 components. One is that there are, I think, 5 different base types, like enhancers, contours, alters. I don't remember them all, but this gives the flexibility to create pretty much any power the anime needs, and of course, as per usual, allows each person to have their own unique power. 2 is that these powers can be as powerful as the characters needs them to be as long as they set conditions that need to be met. The more conditions that need to be met, and the more severe the conditions, the more powerful you will be. If you can meet those conditions, for example, I could give myself the power to shoot fireballs from my hand, and with no condition, it will be as big as my hand. But if I set the condition that I can only shoot the fireballs on the second Thursday of every month, then it becomes a much bigger, maybe the size of my torso. Then if I set the condition that I'll die when I shoot it, then maybe it's as big as the Titanic. Hunter x Hunter gets 4 stars. Yu Yu Hakusho. Yusuke was just a normal high schooler until one day he saves a kid from being run down by a car, only to be run down himself and dies. In the afterlife, he learns that his sacrifice was not needed, as the kid would have survived anyway. But he's rewarded anyway by being allowed to live again, but only if he agrees to be a spirit detective. His job now is to hunt down and capture or kill escaped spirits or demons that are causing trouble. I don't remember a lot of specifics, but his spirit detective job doesn't seem to really last very long. It really seems like it's just a way to get him into situations, which eventually lead to getting him into a fighting tournament in the underworld. I wouldn't say that Yu Yu Hakusho is one of those animes where nobody dies, but when I think back on it, it kind of feels like it is. 2 of his best friends he takes into the tournament with him were former enemies he hunted down as part of his detective job. And the big bad of the tournament, I think, has some sort of redemption, though I don't remember to what degree. And later, still, it shows that everyone in the demon world is not really evil, at least not by the show's standards of what evil is. Like, they're just people who just like to fight, trying to live their life or something. So any enemy is just a friend you haven't gotten to know yet. At least that's what it feels like when I think back on it. It has been a while since I've seen it. Yu Yu Hakusho gets 4 stars. The heroes never feel overpowered, except maybe at the very end, but that's the end anyway, so no big deal. So you can get some pretty good fights out of it. So, to recap, My Hero Academia, 4 stars. One Piece, 4 stars. Evangelion, 4 stars. One Punch Man, 4 stars. Samurai 7, 4 stars. Basilisk, 4 stars. The entire Dragon Ball series, 4 stars. Black Clover, 4 stars. Fairy Tail, 4 stars. Golden Boy, 4 stars. Oh my goddess, 4 stars. Street Fighter 2V, 4 stars. Hunter x Hunter, which I actually finished since I made the video, but it still gets 4 stars. And Yu Yu Hakusho, 4 stars. See you in the next video, where I'll cover my third-rate animes.